So I think it's 2 o'clock. Let's start so that the next one, Josh, who is up at 2:40, also can start in time. Welcome. Thanks that there are so many people, especially when it's going up against Dr. Nick at the same time. I have the pleasure to present to you today a real-life project that we did from CGI. And it's on a PCF environment. So everything you see here is not faked, absolutely the real data. The only thing I'm not able to really say and put on the slides is the name of the customers, compliance reasons, etc., etc. We're talking about a major car manufacturer, and I'm stationed in Germany, in Stuttgart. So it is not the one that produces sports cars in Zuffenhausen. The agenda for today will be, I'll tell you a little bit about the story, so about the project itself. May seem a little extensive, but I think it's important so that you know why we really chose PCF as our environment. Also, what kind of issues we had to face and how a platform really helped us survive in doing that project. Also a little bit about organizational stuff, also the non-technical issues that we had to face, because I personally think they're far harder than the real technical ones. A little bit about technology, depending on how much time we still have. It's not a tech talk, but I can give you as much information as I can. And it's also just 2-3 slides about that. Let's kick it. That's how it all began. This is a real-life picture. Like I said, Stuttgart, Germany. We have the pleasure of being the second most crowded town in Europe when it comes to cars. We spend approximately 2 weeks a year in traffic jams, which is really annoying. And this leads to all kinds of problems. You have an extremely high air pollution, the nice nitrogen dioxides, and those particle matters, the ones, the PM10s, between 2.5 and 10 micrometers, the ones that go into your lung and cause nice things like lung cancer and strokes. It's a real issue. And basically it's caused by, of course, too many people, but it's also caused by things like only one person driving in each car. I mean, you know that if you go to the office and you drive in your car and you look around you, it's always the same. You're alone in your car, the other one's the same. So you have to do something there. This is the basic setting that we have regarding the region. The basic setting of the customer goes like this. This is a plant in Germany. Left side you see a town, below you see a town. Then on the left, the limitation, the highway, the famous Autobahn. And apart from a few fields to the north that somehow the farmers won't sell because they know it's only going to increase in price, the factory actually has a real problem. They have to increase their production, so they have to continue building production facilities, but they also need the space for things like parking, because people have to get there and to work there. So if they take away a parking lot to build a building, they have an issue. And that's exactly what happened. That combined also, of course, with a certain political aspect that all production companies and major employers are talking with the city governments and city politicians, and they have to provide some measures on how to improve their ecological footprint in the region and do something. That was the setting, and make it quick, the customer had certain expectations when they wanted to have their change, and the project had to be ready. What are the customer goals that we had to fulfill? Well, they said, we would like to have an application for ride sharing, and we definitely want, in the first trial period, which was supposed to be like 10 weeks, at least 1,000 active users on that. Those had to have a minimum of 200 new shared rides together. And of course, with that, they want to improve the whole awareness of the ecological thing and the ways mobility is changing right now. So this is one part of a bigger program that our customer did in various locations to change that mentality within their employers. Then they told us, yeah, we would like to go live in 4 months, but we know it's tough, you get 5. Which is nice, but really hard to do. And of course they said, we want a mobile solution. We want it to be publicly available, so it's not going to be an internal solution. So we have the whole nice awareness and stores, etc., that I'll be talking about. And therefore it has to scale. So that's also something we expect you to do for us. Our goal. Let's see if we hit it. The Masterplan, a mobile app where you can search for people that will drive, just in a very abstract way, from A to B at the same time as yourself for sharing that ride. They had such ride-sharing things, but only on a personal level. Now they wanted to professionalize that with a certain app. And since they not only have employers go to their plant, but they have externals, they have suppliers that also do the same thing, they thought, no, let's not make it internal, let's just make it external and publicly available for everyone. The features that were requested were like this. Create an account, fill out the profile, search for other people, share a ride, get virtual coins. I'll talk about that later. Shop with the coins to get something of real value, and then rate the ride. And of course, have fun. The Masterplan of the screens, those are the nice screens. We actually got just some sketchy ones. They wanted some kind of profile view, some kind of map view, some filter view, kind of layered thing to activate and deactivate. So nothing fancy, just kind of like, yeah, a couple of screens. Now comes the reality check. What did we really have to produce? Create an account. Of course, it's publicly available. You only need some public email address, which means you need an email verification process to do that. Which means once you're certified, you want to have a certain comfort. You want some deep linking back into your app, and automatic, because it has to be easy to use, of course. Then you have the whole nice things about forgotten passwords, change emails, delete your whole account, GDPR, etc., etc., etc. You want to search for people. Yeah. In order to do that, it not ends that you found a person, but you want to connect to that person. So this means you have certain status and a certain workflows. So the first step is everyone is anonymous, you just find them. The second step is you request to become friends to get more information about them. And the third one is that you are connected and you are friends. So those are the different possibilities that also have to be implemented and that also have to be visualized somehow. Then they wanted a certain filtering, because it might be that you don't want to drive with a woman, or a woman doesn't want to drive with a man, or they only want to drive with you if you also have a car, because then the next day you can drive. Also identical destinations, or a certain creativity when it comes to destinations at the plant, how far the time ranges should be, all kinds of filtering stuff. The ride sharing, they wanted something simple, how to connect a passenger with a driver. So they suggested, why don't you just use a QR code? So we did that. With the QR code generation, the regenerations, the scanning. And then, of course, it's not only one driver, one passenger. You have one driver, you have multiple passengers, which means you also have to take care of things like when they check out. For example, you have one passenger get on, the second passenger get on, then the first passenger decides, oh, no, I'm getting off prematurely. And because we have certain rating at the end to issue certain coins, we have to take care of all those things. And also, well, if you have shared a ride, when do you want the ride to end? You can do that manually, but wouldn't it be a lot nicer if you could just enter the parking lot in a geofence and the whole thing would be automatic? Sure, it would. And the customer expected us to do that. Time frame is still 5 months. Another things that just come with an application, you need some administrational graphical interface. You have to take care of all the help pages and the first level support things, which the customer did a lot of parts. End user license agreement, all the data protection texts, which are really nice to do. The FOSS license, pretty simple at least, and the imprints. So those are all the things that the customer didn't tell us, but implicitly expected us to do. The reality check, I've shown you those 4 screens. I'm not showing you the Figma where our UI UX designer has put in all the screens, but essentially we had 13 big epics, 19 major screens, and 136 variations. And that means graphical variations, meaning front-end implementation, meaning back-end reactions. The team, the customer team, a project owner, a pure manager, not much technical knowledge, the product owner, who was our counterpart, and some assistant. Our team, Scrum Master, myself, the front-end developer, the back-end developer, and partially a UI UX designer, only partially. So basically it's 6 to 7 people that did the whole thing. That's not really true. We of course needed some additional people. For example, we needed the data protection guys, we needed legal on both sides, and we had a strong operations team that came from the customer and that really, really helped us because the customer is only a business entity and they don't have an IT department. So that operations team really made it possible for us to get that project up and running. But it's not a big thing. The administrational stuff that we had to handle and that was restricting us, the order and the whole offer process, we were really lucky there because they agreed on just buying the Scrum team on an agile basis. So we didn't have that much contractual issues to go through. We also were very lucky because we had a framework treaty with the customer already in place. If you don't have that, I don't think you can make that time scope, never ever. Because it's going to take you 2 or 3 months in big enterprise customers to even get something in writing. Data protection, really, really nice. You all know those abbreviations. Because we were public app processing customer data, we of course had to go through all those niceties and explain to them how the app works and figure out all the technical details, which costs, again, time that we didn't have. The legal thing, because CGI is the application provider, the front end is run on premise at the customer, and all kinds of nice things appear if you add free and open source software with enterprise customers. I said we have a publicly available app, which means that the customer expected not only for iPhones, but also for Android. So we had to go through the whole processes, and we are not a mobile application developer specialists company that does that all the time. We're just regular Java Spring developers. And we underestimated that. That really, really costs a lot of time. The peak was after the third time that Apple refused our app in the first round to get it approved. I had a nice 45-minute talk with Cupertino, with the back office guy, to explain to them that German towns are quite different than American towns in space availability, and also why it's important that this is a public app, because suppliers have to access that, and that it just cannot be an enterprise app, even as it looks like an enterprise app. It was really, really time consuming. Just like every circle takes 3, 4, 5 days, and you really lose time. And all those things, the time frame still doesn't change for us. It's 5 months. So those are the real dates of the project. No, wrong section. We started at the beginning of August last year, and we went live at the end of February. One thing we didn't take into account, I thought, yeah, great, no summer holidays, but there is Christmas. And Christmas means 3 weeks of nothing goes. And in the end, if you look at the development time that we essentially had 8 sprints, and that was it. Then you had to have everything up and running, including the tests. The technical issues that we came across, well, I said in the first slide, there were virtual coins. That means the customer expected us to integrate a blockchain. Because blockchain is a real hype and everyone wants to have one. And then, of course, we asked, why do we really need a blockchain? And the result was, no, we are not planning to trade it. Yes, the only thing that we're going to do is exchange it against vouchers. That was the point when blockchain disappeared, because we had some nice issues with storing the stuff. First, getting parity up and running on PCF, which we did. Then deciding how we're going to store the thing externally. And in the end, after we found out that we really don't need it, that it's just for the hype, we eliminated it pretty quickly together with the customer. Technical complexity. Like I said before, the checkout process is a real hassle. And at one time, we had kind of 26 variations and a huge diagram on our writable wall. And we were just going nuts. It was just getting more and more complex in the implementation. And basically, then we made a cut. I encourage you to do that. If things in a project, especially from a developer perspective, get too complex, step in and try to reduce that to the max. And in here, it really worked brilliantly, because we cut it down to one process, not depending, it's either manually triggered or automatically triggered through the geofences, but we check the driver. If the driver is in the geofence, then we check the passengers. If they're in the geofence, it's fine. And if it's not a valid ride, period. And it worked. And everyone was surprised that it worked, because beforehand, everyone agreed that those 26 variations were absolutely essential. No, they're not. No. We had some nice issues with background states of apps, because we're not the app guys. We kind of missed that in the first round. And things start to behave really differently if an app goes into the background. Things appear like, oh, we don't have this JavaScript core before that was giving us all the connectivity. And, oh, damn, we don't have any GPS data anymore. which kind of killed the whole purpose of the app. That meant with the original intent of using WebSockets, we were stuck, and we had to switch mid-project, which we didn't want to do, because we evaluated before, did we do push notifications or WebSockets, and we decided, okay, WebSockets was the easier thing. But we had to go for push notifications, which works fine, which we're doing right now, all going through Firebase for apps for iPhones and Androids. The email verification process was also a nice one. Things happened during testing that people were getting emails, and they were opening the emails, and they were clicking on it, and they were saying, I'm not getting transferred back to the app. And then we looked at it, and they were opening up the link in their Outlook on their laptop. It's like, how the hell should that work, even? We never tested that as developers because we only tested with the mobile phones, because for us it was clear. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So we had to be creative and create, using some JavaScript libraries, some differentiation between where am I? Am I on an iPhone? Am I on an Android? Am I on a non-mobile device? And depending on that, the different links were then used. And battery life. That GPS tracking is really draining the batteries. It's just enormous. And we had to cut down the rates because the default rates are really extreme. They're draining the battery like hell. So we had to increase the time slots that they're checking it. And we also had to kind of change the process that we did. Before we were tracking passengers and drivers. And the problem is if you have a passenger sitting in the car, he's not going to be connected to some charge unit. Only the driver generally will be. So checking the driver constantly is okay. Checking the passengers can bring their battery down completely. And that, of course, leads, they don't have the application, which means you can't check them out, which means they won't get a valid ride, which causes some discomfort with the users. So keep that in mind. Non-technical issues. The rating, the rating of the app, we started with, you can rate with stars and texts. Don't do that. Except if you have a really big staff that has to hunt those legal issues like insults and slander and all those nice things. So we skipped that and we just stayed with the stars, which is a lot nicer, a lot easier to handle. Communication functionality. At first, the customer expected, oh, if you have found somebody to have a ride with, why don't we communicate with them directly within the app? You don't want to do that. You don't want to become a telecommunication provider. Trust me, the laws are just too intense. So we went for go outside, use whatever other communication means you have, and you're on a mobile device. You have WhatsApp, Threema, Signal, email, phone calls. You can use that. You can also integrate that really, really nicely with the individual mobile operating system functionalities. And that is absolutely sufficient. So don't try to integrate an individual chat on top of WhatsApp. Don't do that. The shop, oh yeah. The first idea was, why don't we make it possible for the people to exchange something against real money or real money value? That has proven to be really difficult if you're in Germany. I guess in other countries it's a little easier, but German tax laws, they have some bad clawback thing, because if you get some kind of benefit, doesn't have to be real money, then the tax law is all over you. And if you have customers that are using your app that are not your employees, you also don't want to do that. So the final and not very nice solution that the customer decided to do here is you can get vouchers for your virtual coins, kind of vouchers for football games, vouchers for gas. Or if you're not an employee, you can donate it to an environmental project, which is also a nice thing. but not really perfect solution. Change requests, something that really, really stalled us and nearly brought some sprints to a complete halt, were in the middle project, not big changes, but requests or requests for information about certain statistics that the customer needed in order to adapt their application. So that really kept the developers from developing. So we pretty quickly switched to a system where we really tried everything in the app that could be configurable to make it configurable, to put it in the administrational UI, and also to integrate statistics and reporting for the customer so that they would bother us the least. Time, that was our main issue. We did not have enough time. Time was always running short, and that's where the platform came into place. From the beginning, we were looking for something that could help us get the project up and running. What I really like about Cloud Foundry / Pivotal Cloud Foundry, it has nearly zero setup time, and I'll tell you exactly why that's the case for us, and it still is. We liked that we get a scalability out of the box. We just don't have to do anything. It just comes with the platform. Because if we would have to set up that thing, no way we could have made it. And of course the time saving, and I'm speaking out of a development application delivery point of view, time savings. In detail, that means we were using the public platform from Pivotal. And we still do, and many of the developers do that for testing purposes and kicking up projects, because you can have a project set up in 15 minutes, and you don't need anyone else. And that's exactly what you want. You get the speed out of the whole thing. The marketplace, I really, really love the marketplace. Two things that I experienced myself, because I did those elements in the project. When we needed databases with an enterprise customer, that normally means like 3 to 4 weeks in talking with database administrators. I don't have 3 or 4 weeks to just get a relational database. Marketplace PCF, one click, service brokers, everything is spun up in the back, and the damn thing is even high available because the whole platform is. So I can do it myself. And when we switched from the first architecture, microservices and one database, the bad thing to do, to all our services and a database for each service, I think it took me like 25 minutes for all our 10 services to have the databases provisioned in the background. It was just a click. It was really, really nice. And also AppDynamics, we use AppDynamics for application monitoring. It's also at the customer integrated into the marketplace. Setting it up for the environment took me an hour together with an AppDynamics guy. Then we had the whole application in AppDynamics. And the things that I had to change within the application, 2 custom variables and a redeploy. That's it. And that's really, really nice. It just gives you so much speed, and you're completely flexible. You don't need anyone else. You can do that at 10 in the evening or on Saturday if you have nothing else to do. You're independent, and I really, really like that. I said web UI. Yeah, we had a web UI for the application, but with here, the web UI, I mean from PCF. I really like it when I work with command shells. I do that all the time, but it's also nice to have a real nice graphical UI, to have everything at your fingertips, to manage your spaces, your users, to get the log files really quick if you don't need to do a tail, just look at it. That's pretty nice to have. Of course, Spring Boot integration is great, which is also a nice thing. And the app autoscaler. I really love that thing. because even I was able to configure the whole scaling thing, which normally I wouldn't be. There are some certain drawbacks, some things you have to be careful if you're doing that with Java applications. Try not to go too much on RAM metrics, because they will go up and spin up instances, but they will never go down because of the size of the JVMs. But as soon as we found that out and only used CPU and other matrices, the scaling was just a breeze. And it's just a click, and you can do that during runtime. There is no downtime. It's really easy. And of course, the CLI. AK login, which I really love for logging in, but MySQL, I don't know if you've ever used the CFCLI plugin MySQL. We did the whole migration, which means we just wrote a small batch script, and we dumped all the databases, and we pushed them up again into the new environment when we had to switch from integration to production. And it took like 20 minutes, I think. So if you want to do that, don't do the PCF documented way using SSH and Bosch and whatever that you'll find in the online documentation. Please use MySQL plugin. And something that the customer really liked and wanted, the pay-per-use issue. Because like I said, we wanted scalability, but we didn't know when the thing would scale. So moderate beginning cost, and I'm not talking about moderate licensing of the whole platform. I'm talking about the costs for the project, because the customer has this platform to use for lots of projects. So the project cost was pretty fair. And we get the scalability and high availability just out of the box, out of the platform team. Nothing for us to do, which I really like. That's the application. How does the thing work? You have a person sending the app request, routes to the server, where you have the PCF, just sends the response using push notifications, and off you go. It is pretty simple from the architectural setup. What I wanted to show you here is that we integrated the databases within the PCF and used all the high availability scenarios that are also available there. But mail servers and other infrastructural services, they were outside within the customer infrastructure. And that is also really, really nicely done and possible. It will cost you a little bit of time, but that's fine. The backend, due to time issues, I'll just go right through that. It's pretty simple. It's Spring Boot application using lots of stuff from Spring, the push notifications, mail templating, time leave. We extended that a little bit with a service ourselves. The whole application was thought of to be a multi-tenant. We are now integrating the second tenant. So the customer only wanted one tenant at the beginning, which I can also not advise. If I would do it a second time, I would do it multi-tenant from the beginning, because going through the whole application, through every service and through all the databases, it's not pretty. And yeah, the user roles were also tenant-based. We split that a little bit for speed and for security, keeping some tokens, and then for the hard stuff, doing the verifications, of course, before we do that. Frontend is React Native, because we knew we needed Android and iPhone, iOS, and we just didn't have the manpower or the knowledge to write that in the native way. And we didn't have to. But we used Redux for application management stages in the front end to handle that, which I can also really commend. It's a really nice framework. And one thing that also cost us some time, why we didn't really do the 5 months, but the 5 months and 3 weeks, testing. iOS testing is fine. You only have like 2 devices. You only have 2 versions to handle. You only have 2 solutions to handle. That is different with Android. And it's really a pain. And what happens is You do it for iPhone, you test it, it works. It's getting compiled, you test it on Android, it doesn't. You change it, you build it again, it works on Android, it doesn't work on iPhone. That's the reality. So if you have to do that, please keep in mind to space away a lot of time in your project for retesting. It's not really, really difficult. It's just damn time consuming and really annoying for the developers. But still, I can highly recommend React Native. It's a nice framework and it really works. Summary. The customer wanted more than 1,000 active users within 10 weeks. We did more than 5,000 registered users within 4 weeks. 1 or 2 days, we were the highest ranking downloads on iPhone in Germany, which really surprised us. 200 new rideshare teams. We had, in the beginning, in the first 4 weeks, more than 400. We now have constant ride shares of approximately 400 to 500 every day. Of course, the mentality changed. The customer did a lot of marketing for the application, for the app, and people are really using the thing. And they continue to use it. So it's not only the hype that we were afraid of, that in the first 4-8 weeks people were using it and then not anymore. We now are in 7 months after go live, and we have over 12,000. I checked on Monday, over 12,000 registered users, over 2,000 highly active users. So it's really kicking. Well, they go live in 5 months. Like I said, it's not completely green. It took us 5 months and 3 weeks to do that. Yeah, and the thing really can scale, which means we hit the goal. Thank you very much.